The eunuch's footsteps echo on cold stone. It is 3 in the morning in the Forbidden City, and a girl of 14 is being carried through a corridor she has never seen, wrapped only in a silk blanket embroidered with clouds. The men holding the poles do not speak. She does not speak. To speak would be to break a rule so old it has no author. At the end of the corridor, a door opens. Warm light spills out. The scent of sandalwood. She has been chosen tonight. But chosen for what exactly? You think you know what a concubine was? A beautiful woman in silk, lounging in a pavilion, eating lychees, competing for the emperor's attention with poetry and perfume. The reality was something stranger and more unsettling. A concubine in Imperial China was not a mistress. She was a civil servant, ranked, salaried, scheduled, and audited. In a gilded bureaucracy where the currency was not love but ritual, and the job description was to wait. The waiting began before she ever entered the palace. In 1621, the Tianqi emperor of the Ming Dynasty sent eunuchs across the empire to gather 5,000 girls between the ages of 13 and 16. Their families were given travel money and a deadline. What followed was a selection process so precise it makes a modern job interview look casual. On day 1, the girls stood in groups of 100 by age. Eunuchs walked the lines and eliminated 1,000 for being too tall, too short, too fat, or too thin. On day 2, they examined faces, hair, skin, teeth, and voices. 2,000 more went home. On day 3, they measured wrists and toes, watched each girl walk, and dismissed another 1,000. The remaining 1,000 were taken into the palace, where older matrons led them into private rooms to examine their bodies, smell their breath, feel their skin, and assess their character. 300 passed that round. After a month of observation for temperament, intelligence, and virtue, 50 remained. 50 out of 5,000, 1%. The Qing scholar Ji Yun recorded this process in his biography of the Ming Empress, and the math is worth pausing on. A girl had a better chance of passing the Imperial Civil Service exam than of becoming a concubine. And then, having been chosen, she found that the palace was not a reward. It was a schedule. In the Qing dynasty, the women of the 6 western palaces were woken before dawn by eunuchs calling outside their doors. There was no sleeping in. They dressed according to rank, bright colors for the highest, plain cotton for the lowest, and walked, in order of precedence, to pay respects to the Empress Dowager. The food was allocated by formula. The Qing palace regulations, recorded in the Guochao Gongshi, specified that the empress received 16 jin of pork per day, 1 sheep and 1 chicken and duck each, to share with her 12 maids and eunuchs. A low-ranking attendant received 1 jin and 8 liang of pork and 2 jin of vegetables. No eggs. Her annual salary was 30 taels of silver, from which she was expected to tip the eunuchs who controlled her access to everything. Some women secretly embroidered silk and had it sold outside the palace walls just to get by. They could not visit one another's quarters. The court feared factionalism, so most afternoons were spent alone in a single room with needlework, a brush, or silence. But what happened when the sun went down? The night was the most regulated part of all. After the emperor's evening meal, a eunuch presented a tray of green-topped bamboo tablets, each bearing a concubine's name. The emperor flipped one. That woman was bathed, perfumed, stripped naked, searched for weapons, wrapped in a cloak, and carried to the dragon bed. She entered from the foot of the bed and crawled upward under the covers. Outside, eunuchs knelt and waited. After a fixed interval, they called out to announce that time was up. If the emperor did not respond, they called again. No concubine was permitted to stay until dawn. That was the empress's privilege alone. When it was over, the eunuch asked a single question, retain or not. If the emperor said retain, the date and name were recorded in a special ledger. If he said not, the woman was taken away and treated to prevent pregnancy. Every encounter was logged. Every body was accounted for. The emperor himself, the most powerful man in the world, could not spend an unscheduled night. But here is what the ledgers and regulations could not control. Some of these women learned. In the Tang Dynasty, the palace ran its own schools, the Neijiao Fang and the Pear Garden, where women were taught the classics, calligraphy, mathematics, chess, music, and dance. The new history of Tang records 18 instructors on the palace faculty, including specialists in the Daoist classics, seal script, law, and poetry. A concubine who could compose a verse that caught the emperor's ear could rise, and a woman who understood politics, even from behind a screen, could change the empire. In 690 CE, a former concubine named Zetian declared herself emperor, the only woman in Chinese history to hold that title in her own right. She had entered the palace as a low-ranking talent of Taizong, been sent to a Buddhist nunnery after his death, and returned as the consort of his son. She ruled for 15 years. In the 19th century, another concubine, a Manchu girl from the Yehanara clan, was selected as a low-ranking consort for the Xianfeng emperor. She bore his only surviving son, and after Xianfeng's death in 1861, she engineered a coup, removed the 8 regents he had appointed, and ruled China from behind a silk screen for 48 years. History calls her Cixi. The Northern Wei dynasty, terrified of exactly this possibility, had a custom. When a crown prince was named, his mother was put to death. It did not work. The mother of one crown prince, Lady Hu, refused to be intimidated, survived, and became regent anyway. The system spent 2,000 years designing walls to keep women out of power, and from inside those walls, some of the most powerful rulers in Chinese history emerged. Why? Because the harem was the only space in the entire empire where a woman could be close to the machinery of state. The civil service exam was closed to her. The battlefield was closed to her. The throne was closed to her. But the bedchamber, that narrow corridor between silence and ritual, was not. And the women who survived it learned something that the regulations never anticipated, that the appearance of powerlessness can be its own kind of access. You can hear the echo of this in the oldest poem in the Chinese tradition about concubines. In the Book of Songs, compiled sometime before 600 BCE, a poem called Small Stars describes a concubine walking through the dark before dawn, carrying her own bedding on her way to the prince's chamber. 3 or 5 small stars in the east, it says. Swiftly by night we go, carrying our coverlets and sheets. Our lot is not like hers. The wife is the moon. The concubines are the stars. Smaller, dimmer, numerous, and up before dawn. The poem is nearly 3,000 years old. It could have been written yesterday. The gilded cage has not disappeared. It has changed its shape. Every institution that tells you to wait your turn, to be patient, to be grateful for the room they have given you, every hierarchy that measures your worth by the favor of someone more powerful, is a descendant of that palace. And every person who has ever used the limited space they were given to learn, to organize, to outlast the people who built the walls, is a descendant of the women who walked those corridors. The eunuch's footsteps echo on cold stone. The girl of 14 grips the silk blanket around her shoulders. The door opens, the warm light spills out, but this time when she walks through it, she is not just entering the emperor's chamber, she is entering the only room in the empire where a woman could learn how everything worked and decide whether she wanted it to stay that way. The stars were small, but they were the only light in the sky before dawn.